John Scott, Vic Carucci, Jonathan Acosta's the Bills with one heck of a football game and a comeback, 39-34 over the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's just start generally. We've seen this football team rally from seemingly the dead before. This the latest example. What is it about this football team that allows them to never say die?
Well, first of all, they hate doing things the easy way. They just love to do it the most difficult way possible. This was another example of that. Creating adversity for themselves. You know, we're standing in the end zone where, okay, James Cook is going in for a touchdown, and you're sitting up there and you registered touchdown in your brain, and no, the ball comes out. And yes, the Bengals recover. And yes, the Bengals take it and turn it into a touchdown that seemingly turns this whole game on its side. And we know what the rest of the story is, but the rest of the story is the essence of what this team is about, thriving on adversity and fighting their way back. We saw it in the opener, obviously, against the Ravens, the fourth quarter miracle that game was. Now I'm going to start using maybe that less of the word miracle and just say this is the way the Bills like to do things in the fourth quarter.
Especially when they play AFC North teams at home, right? That's been the common opponent here in these two comebacks. But also the script a little bit similar too, in the sense that, hey, the offense is sort of doing its thing, but it needs a play from the defense considering the score and the amount of time left. In that opener, it was Ed Oliver forcing the fumble on Derrick Henry. And right here was Christian Benford for a second straight week, a game that, with a play that not just important, but that completely flips the game on its head. Last week, when the offense was struggling to score, get some points up on the board, and then all of a sudden the offense is playing from an advantageous position the rest of the second half. Right here, literally gives the Bills the lead. I think I saw the next-gen stats that it flipped the Bills' win probability from less to 20% to more than 60%, which is the highest flipping win probability in a non-last two-minute play, I think, in the next-gen stats era.
2016.
So, yeah, so it shows you just how pivotal that play was, and then you combine that with the way this team played both on offense and defense the rest of the fourth quarter. Like you said, they seem to thrive in adversity when not many teams are able to say that.
We'll start on defense because the Bengals scored touchdowns in their first three possessions of the game. Overall, third down defense was absolutely pathetic. And it's been pathetic and problematic throughout the entirety of this season. Even at some of their best moments, they have had issues stopping them. 10 of 12 at the end of the day. They started 7 of 7, got 2 in a row, and then they get the final 3. But it's these opportunistic plays that we oftentimes see. You asked Taron Johnson a few weeks ago.
The season opener, actually.
Can you just rely on making these plays at the end of games? And he's like, well, it keeps happening, so why not? But, Vic, it is amazing that there is a consistency on the defensive side where the first half can look absolutely dreadful.
Yeah.
They seem to rally and make adjustments second half, and it's not always just completely flipping the script, but they're able to make the plays and the stops and adjustments to give the offense the chance.
So you definitely want to give them credit for that, but you can't ignore what puts them in those situations where they have to adjust, where they have to respond and rally. But the third down defense, you're right, atrocious. And one of the numbers that was so disturbing with this football team, when you think back to last season and the 8 turnovers that they had, they were becoming now this season more of a turnover team and more of a team struggling in that, giveaway takeaway ratio. And for the defense, I think that was the hallmark a year ago, the ability to take the ball away while the offense isn't giving it away. It's a different year for that. And then you add to that those third down conversions. I mean, how do you overcome that? Well, you do what we saw today, the Christian Benford play, the pick 6 on a blitz. And, let's not only give him credit as an athlete for what he did to make that play and then take it 63 yards for the touchdown, but the call of it, understanding the vulnerability that the Bengals had there. And this was the Bengals. I know that third down number is ugly. But it was Joe Burrow, and it is this offense with 2 of the best receivers in the league. It's hard to not say, hey, that's gonna maybe happen against that guy.
To me, it comes down to something being sustainable and not sustainable. I'll start with this, because I remember that question I asked Taron Johnson, and I feel right now the same way I felt back then. Is that these turnovers, yes, the Bills do have a knack for creating them, but especially when you compare it to the third down defense, it seems like being able to create these turnovers is not as sustainable as it would be to just have a defense that consistently gets stops. I found myself thinking on the sideline here is how often are we in a situation where we're watching these sort of games play out and we're not thinking the Bills need a stop here. We're thinking the Bills need a turnover because they're not going to stop them from reaching the end zone or kicking a field goal otherwise. They seemingly are able to come up with these important plays. Again, Christian Benford and Ed Oliver in that week 1. But you just have to think that come playoff time, they're going to run into some sort of offense where that offense is going to take care of the football. And then when you need to consistently get these stops, this team's so good oftentimes on first and second down, and then all that effort goes to waste when they let these teams convert. And we're not talking 3rd and 1s either. We're talking 3rd and mediums, 3rd and longs. You know, that's the sustainable way to build a good defense, and that's just not what we've seen so far this season from the Bills.
The only thing I would insert, you're absolutely right, looking at what might be in the postseason, running up against that team that, say, doesn't turn it over. However, you got to get to the postseason first, and responding as they did in this game, overcoming that adversity in this game. Because you lose this game, that whole playoff picture thing, they're not out of anything mathematically, but it would make that climb that much steeper.
Well, and that leads me to the second point in saying that what is sustainable is just that the Bills find ways to win games. And sometimes we can overanalyze things, look for hey, this is the X factor. This is the key to it. Sometimes it's just an it factor. Some teams have it, some don't. And what we've seen consistently with this Bills team under Sean McDermott and with Josh Allen is that they find ways to win games even when it seems improbable. And it's simply what happened here against the Bengals as well.
I have a question that I'm going to break into 2 parts, and I want to get Jonathan's answer first. From your perspective on the field during the game, first half in particular, how did you feel the footing was for the guys on the field?
It's something that even we remarked amongst the videographers here on the sideline, because the snow was starting to accumulate maybe even more than we had expected. And it just seemed like maybe some of the strides, especially early on, were a little bit choppy so as to not lose their balance. I thought the footing was not ideal, obviously, in the first half. The snow sort of tapered off after halftime a little bit and then started to pick back up for the fourth quarter. But that period of time where it stopped snowing really hard, I think allowed the field crew obviously to get a lot of this snow off the field in terms of at least being able to clean it up in certain aspects. But certainly the footing worse off, especially in the first quarter compared to the third and fourth.
So Vic, now that I want to take it to you because we have more of a elevated view. A lot of the comments and criticisms first half was the soft coverage the Bills were playing, which allowed a lot of these third downs. It's like, why are you playing 10 yards off on 3rd and 7? And my just natural feeling, we didn't hear anything post-game, at least that I was part of reasons why. We know that's kind of Sean's thing, and it's also something people have been highly critical of at key moments here. What did you think of how soft they were playing, especially first half?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's fair to say it was too soft against a team that can make so many plays in the passing game when the coverage is tight. It was a pitch and catch game for the most part for Joe Burrow and his receivers, and I think that soft coverage had a lot to do with it. I also would guess, I think it's an educated guess, that the footing played into that. We saw Ty Johnson just slip just on his own. That he's going in. That's a score, and he just falls, and he knows it. He saw the frustration. I'm again guessing that the surface was had something to do with it. And we're looking at it now, and this is a little more snow I think than we started to see at the latter part of the game. But still, I would say it might have been an overthinking on the part of Sean McDermott. And perhaps Bobby Babbage from a defensive standpoint to say, look, the best thing we're going to do, we'll give up these passes, let them have long plodding drives and let there perhaps be the penalty or turnover or something, a drop ball here and there, because maybe catching the ball is not going to be as or is also going to be as difficult as running.
Well, it didn't work.
Especially when you take into
that's right. It didn't work.
Especially when you take into consideration the lack of a pass rush that the Bills had in this game. Already down Joey Bosa, right? You knew there was going to be tough sledding for them and that they probably weren't going to get much of a pass rush, if any. That's certainly how it played out. Sean McDermott even spoke to that, saying that, on that Christian Benford interception, they blitzed him, right? And they had to start trying to find a different way to get pressure on Joe Burrow, and one of the ways to do that is blitzing. Why? Because they were not able to consistently get home, generate that pressure the way they wanted to in the first half.
All right, I can't believe it's taken us this long, but the defense, both sides of the coin, warranted a large discussion. Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things. Deion Dawkins joking afterwards. He's like, I don't know. Do they in the headset or something say, it's time for you to do what you do? And it seems like, it's like the Buffalo Wild Wings commercial where they hit the button and it's like something magical happens here. I always say this. I've said it amongst us before. It's like you just have to appreciate, understand in the moment what we are watching, because as normal and regular as these occurrences have become, it is anything but. And it's just the latest chapter. And this guy who, he's not there yet, and we're not going to go too far ahead, but a guy that is paving his way towards being a Hall of Famer.
Incredible, remarkable, astonishing. All these adjectives have been used over and over again. And there are times you got to catch yourself where you take for granted he's just going to do this. He's going to run 40 yards for a touchdown. He's going to run 17 yards on 3rd and 15 to close out the game. He's just going to do that because he's Josh Allen and it's what he does. But not every quarterback in the history of this league does anything approaching that. And this was a game you started to feel that reflective sense, and you heard it from Sean McDermott after the game. Now, there was more than just what Josh did. We discussed the defensive plays and how big those were, but Josh Allen, it really is the headline when it comes to him doing these amazing things, putting on the proverbial Superman cape. And Sean McDermott was getting all nostalgic because he was talking about pregame warm-ups, watching kickers, and looking up at the scoreboard and seeing an advertisement for the seats that could be purchased after this place is demolished, and thinking, what that means. Like, how many people have sat in those seats? Generations of fans and the memories they have. And he brought up, Jim Kelly and those Super Bowl Bills. And then he, of course, references Josh Allen, the memories that have been made since Sean McDermott and Josh have been here. And it made me reflect, and I've been at this place. I mean, I started covering the Bills way back in 1982. So, and I go back even before that, covering the NFL. And as a fan in the 70s, and it just comes back to me that, you look at all these seats and who's been here and what they've witnessed and what we've all witnessed from this football team. And today, or this game, was another example of something you're going to stamp in your head, and you're in that that keepsake that you keep, your book of memories. You're going to put that in there and say, what I saw here was incredible.
That line there reminds me of the advertisement they had in Cleveland, right, for LeBron, the "We Are All Witnesses."
Yeah.
It kind of feels like everyone here is a witness to sort of the legendary, really, career that Josh Allen is putting together. And I think we're seeing a guy who's maybe sneaking his way back into the MVP conversation.
Yes.
I think Matthew Stafford and Drake May are still the top two favorites in that race, but I think here comes Josh Allen. You think about some of these performances in recent weeks, nothing really to write home about against Pittsburgh, but they get the job done. He made the plays when he needed to in the second half. The Tampa Bay game here, the historic 6-touchdown game. And now this one, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers. When on the other side, you're playing one of those elite quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, who himself had a great game, but he had the 2 costly turnovers that turned this game around, right? Josh Allen able to take care of the ball. We've seen that be a key to success for this team. When this team takes care of the football, especially Josh Allen, and is able to have those touchdown numbers the way he normally does, that's a big recipe for success. Think about who he's doing this with also. Christian Benford has as many touchdowns the last 2 weeks as Bills wide receivers. Khalil Shakir this week, Keon Coleman last week. Christian Benford equaling that total for the Bills wide receivers. He's really doing it when he's throwing the football to the running backs, to James Cook, to Ty Johnson, and today especially to the tight ends, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Jackson Haas, all getting involved. But he's not like a Matthew Stafford over here throwing it to Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams.
No.
He's throwing it to behind the line of scrimmage to Khalil Shakir, and every once in a while past the line of scrimmage to maybe like a Keon Coleman. But really, when you take into account the weapons at his disposal, especially in the passing game, I think it makes it that much more impressive what Josh Allen is doing right now.
And I just wanted to play off your reference to the MVP voting. I'm a voter for that, but you brought up doing more with less, and that was absolutely a large part of the thinking I had in voting for Josh as the MVP for the 2024 season. The year before that, I voted for Lamar Jackson, and it was close last year between Josh and Lamar. Again, I know you brought up Matthew Stafford. You bring up Drake May. I mean, those are legit names in the conversation. I'm not revealing anything about the way I'm trending in my voting, because we don't do that until the year is over. I want all the evidence in, and the AP, which runs the award, frowns upon really any sense of any of the voters giving where they're going. So, and I can honestly say I don't have my mind made up, but I can say that Josh has worked his way back into at least the conversation. Got, and there's still more seasons left, and I think opportunity left for him to do some things to put himself, maybe even elevate himself in that.
You talked about the weapons. Cincinnati is, you talk about maybe historically bad at covering the tight ends, so it was encouraging but not that surprising to see. Now maybe with Dalton Kincaid's return, you thought it'd be Kincaid leading the way. I think it's really important that Dawson Knox has a game like this. Not that you're going to now thrust him into a big role, but I think it's just important to say this guy can still do it. Wide receivers are what they are. It is what it is at this point. I want to finish this way. You mentioned Drake May. It's the big matchup. It's probably not going to ultimately swing the division. I still think that that's going to be a really tough hill to climb. But I think it's a big just statement and measuring stick at this point in the year as the Bills head to Foxborough next weekend.
No question, and it's being set up perfectly. I think this win, kind of catapults the Bills into a position of course, first and foremost, secure that playoff spot. And one more win could conceivably do it. And if it came against the Patriots, I think it could do two things. The remote possibility of the division would still be alive. But maybe more important is what it would mean for the postseason, that when these two teams could clash again, and maybe likely would clash again. And, of course, in Foxborough. But so what? I think the Bills are still stinging and bitter over that loss, that 3-turnover game that came down to the last seconds and lost it on the field goal against the Patriots here, and want to make amends for that. That could happen, certainly in this upcoming game, but I think more important for the Bills is the idea that, okay, get more feel for what the Drake May, Mike Vrabel coached Patriots are about, and then take that into the postseason.
I agree with you. I think it comes down to swagger, right? You go into Foxborough, and even if the Patriots end up winning the division, all of that sort of goes out the window once the playoffs start. The division title is nice, but what matters is the Super Bowl. So if you go into Foxborough and you beat them, hey, maybe the Patriots do end up winning the AFC East, but then you're facing a possibility where if you beat them, that gives Denver now the leg up in terms of the number 1 seed. If you still are in the 7th seed, guess where you're going in the first round? Right back to Foxborough.
Yep.
You're going there with a lot of confidence if you're coming off a win against the Patriots in that same stadium a month or so beforehand.
A big performance by the Bills and a comeback here. Certainly one of the talking points of the AFC playoff picture. The biggest, of course, Daniel Jones, it appears, has a season-ending Achilles injury. Indianapolis was already free-falling. Now they're going to be without their quarterback. Riley Leonard, a Notre Dame Duke guy, is now the one that's going to try to weather the storm there. But as they fall, Houston rises. It seems like maybe the bottom of the AFC playoff picture will kind of sort itself out. And we'll see from there. But big one next Sunday in Foxborough, 1 o'clock, Bills and the Patriots with Jonathan Acosta, whose hair is still looking good. That's why he's not wearing a hat. Don't let him fool you. It's not because he's tough. It's he doesn't want to mess up the flow. Vic and I don't have flow. That's why we're wearing hats here. So
I might be Floridian, but we can be strong at least for a little bit.
So we're going to wrap it up. Really Jonathan Acosta, Vic Crucci. I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.